Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro RPG. The end of another week, the end of another poll. We've got a fantastic win for the Dying Earth RPG. And this has been a suggestion from a viewer. And I'm really enjoying this, that you are getting to introduce me to some of the RPGs that you love, as well as the many times I've introduced you to some of the RPGs I love. But anyway, this is going to be a PDF review, so we'll be going over to the computer desktop in a wee second to have a look at that. And I'll be back at the end of the video as usual, with some other poll related stuff and some other channel related stuff. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my Patreons, who this week I have been told know that living creatures, if nothing else, have the right to life. It is their only truly precious possession, and the stealing of life is a wicked threat. Which is a quote from a Jack Vance book, which will become relevant later. But anyway, these are wonderful people who help support the channel and allow me to cover obscure RPGs like this, and things like Dogs in the Vineyard, Earthdawn, which don't get the massive views that if I kept chasing Dungeons & Dragons, Shadowrun, etc. I would be getting. And it's those options to look at the obscure games that I absolutely adore that these people give me, so I thank them from the bottom of my heart. Now if you'd like to join them and help support the channel, or you'd like to see these videos a week early, or you'd like to gain access to one of the other levels of patronage we've got, then we've got a Patreon in the description down below. If you check it out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at the Dying Earth RPG. So, this is the Dying Earth role-playing game, which came out from Pelgrane Press in 2001. And it is based, as it says on the cover, on the works of Jack Vance, his Dying Earth series of novels and short stories. Now, these are stories I'm not actually familiar with. I've never read any of them. So I jumped on Wikipedia to read through summaries of all the stories to try and get a feeling for this world. And it's quite interesting. It's a fantasy world with magic in it and various creatures. But it's our world, but it's at the very end of its life. Many tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years in the future, the planet is dying. The sun has expanded out, doesn't provide as much energy anymore, and is on the edge of swallowing the Earth type thing. But what has happened in the meantime is civilizations have come and fallen. So there are ruins of all these civilizations. So you'll find ruined cities, there's floating highways in one place, there are flying cars, there's lots of technology left over that you can scavenge from the ruins of these civilizations. But also, as the world is coming towards its end, magic has returned. And over the aeons, I suppose, the massive eras of time, people have used magic to create various creatures and monsters, and they now populate the Earth along with humanity. So you do get weird flying creatures like you can see on the cover here. Now there's some interesting things in the rules. I'll be doing a rules breakdown in a future week, a couple of weeks' time. They're slightly odd in that everybody rolls the same dice, but depending on your ability you get to re-roll to see if you get a better result more often. But anyway, starting to go through the rulebook. Well, there's some very nice artwork in it. I find it amusing that at the village Troon, the river emptied into the Zombal March, because Troon is the next town along to me, just a couple of miles in that direction. Based on the Dying Earth book series by Jack Vance. Nice credits page. Designed by Robin D. Laws, who we've covered a bunch of his stuff on the channel before. He is a very well-known quantity, an excellent role-playing publisher, but one that kind of emerged in the 90s, rather than somebody who's been around since the very origins of role-playing back in the 70s. About Jack Vance and Dying Earth, we've got an introduction to that. Nice contents page, laying out not only where the chapters start, but roughly what's in them. And then we're into Chapter 1, Getting Started, a rules overview for novices and veterans alike, essential for cogent discussion, yet perforce cursory and plagued by rebarbative generality. Because that's one of the things about the Dying Earth, is that language has become a real thing. It points out that people all tend to use this overly fancy version of language. But there's not going to be a lot of combat in this game. It's not your standard fantasy game. So we've got how it works, game moderators playing a character, game moderator characters. Again, a bugbear of mine is we've got a games master and we've got non-player characters. Why do we need to relabel them? Life on the Dying Earth, thinking as your character, speaking as your character, using your abilities. Persuading and rebuffing. And it goes into quite a bit of detail about that, interacting with player characters, plot thickens, on with the game. Important matters to forget, because this is a section which I found very, very useful to tell me what's different about this game, rather than just playing Dungeons & Dragons again, but saying the world is the Dying Earth. If you're in a fight, something has probably gone horribly wrong. Many fantasy adventurers thrive on combat, but Dying Earth characters prefer to avoid violence. Far better to gain the upper hand through verbal verve, cunning, wit, and treachery. 2. Characters are more or less alike. A great attraction of other role-playing games is deep exploration of the unique characters you create, their histories, backgrounds, motivations, speech patterns, and so on. Not here. Killing, how uncivilized. Though countless small towns and villages follow their idiosyncratic customs, most communities frown on open murder, even in self-defense. Dying Earth combat system encourages non-lethal victories. Your character will inevitably suffer reverses. Try to enjoy it. In most role-playing games, you want your character to succeed all the time, but in Dying Earth, your PC's goals and actions may not always be admirable, and even if they are, indifferent fate will trip him up anyway. That's just the way that stories work. So it's kind of pointing out this will be a bit different. I'm not sure how that will go down with players, telling them, oh, well, sometimes you're just going to lose. Live with it. I think players would have a difficulty accepting that. We'll try and keep manipulating things rather than just enjoying losing. Goes through the chapters again, detailing them out in more detail, and then we're on to characters. First reassurance, a note on Vancian language. If big words put you off, stay calm. When you meet one, breathe deeply and check the sentence again. Meaning is always clear from the context. So they are using overly fancy language in it, much like the world does. So you've got a character sheet, what you can spend to create your characters. Are you persuasive? A nice image of people being glib, eloquent, obfuscatory, forthright, charming, and intimidating. How well do you resist suasion? So how do you resist being persuaded of things? How well do you hit? How well do you avoid being hit? When you do get hit, how quickly do you recover? Do you use weapons? Do you wield magic? What else can you do? And it's got a range of different skills there. Whom do you know? What do you own? Now, this is an odd one because it's far more descriptive. A weapon such as a rapier, axe, dagger, or club, good boots, a warm cloak, a fashionable hat. So it's more descriptive of the items rather than just standard items, as we'll see when we reach the equipment section, because I believe it's only 2 pages long. It really doesn't have much of a feature on that. What else we got here? Some people to know, and it's got some sort of major NPCs. Because another point about the Dying Earth is that it has a relatively low population. I believe it's only a few thousand spread across the Earth are left. These are major influencing characters, but the population's very low, so you're likely to meet major characters over and over again. Whom do you command? Obedience versus competence. How well do you resist temptation? Last step, or step last. So who does that make you? Now take the stage. So it's got all the elements of creating character, but creating their personality more than just assigning points. While the early stages are assigning some points to create a character, it's really trying to get to know the meat of the character that you'll be role-playing. It's all very positive. Example of character creation, we've got essential rules. So, ordinary things, ratings, your dice pools, boons and levies, bonuses and penalties, refreshing your pools, resolving actions with rerolls. As I said, you're rolling 1 dice and these are the levels of success. Now you can re-roll these. If you've made an absolutely dismal failure, it costs you more to re-roll. So it shrinks your dice pool quicker. Whereas if you get an illustrious success, it adds dice back into your pool, making you'll be able to have further attempts of that pool later on. Purist options, adjusting a task difficulty, advice for games masters in their contests, so when two people are competing against each other, boons and levies in contests, various descriptions of different types of tests you can do, continuing through multiple targets, so if you're attacking multiple people, but ganging up, so multiple people attacking a single target, or working against a single target. Again, more examples, because these rules are a bit different. Tallies. And then we're on to abilities in practice. So, we've got the various abilities like persuading and rebuffing persuasion attempts. We've got different things here. Eloquence, forthrightness, charming. Rebuff styles, benefits and drawbacks if you're pure-hearted or contrary, loyally, obtuse. On being persuaded, because this will be about players affecting other players and NPCs affecting players and convincing them of things, while that might change the way you behave, you might not be happy about that. And it makes that point. Just as somebody's convinced you of something that you have to do, it doesn't mean that you're going to be their best friend. Try to enjoy it. We've got combat with attacks from strength and speed, aimed attacks, different types of weapons here, missile combat, all the sorts of usual stuff, defense, health and hazards. What happens if you fall or you get burned? Poisons. How you recover from that damage. And then we've got other abilities, your sort of standard skills, so appraising, athletics, craftsmanship, engineering, etiquette, pedantry, perception, physician, scuttlebutt, seamanship, stewardship, wherewithal. Then we've got a large section on relationships, going through how you use those. Income, refreshing wealth, retainers, resistances you've got here. And then we're on to the magic system. Well, obviously, this is one of the things which is going to be kind of familiar, because Dungeons & Dragons has always used Vancian magic. But this, I believe, is trying to be a bit closer to the magic of the books, where you are creating the spells out of elements within your head, and then that memorized stuff disappears. But where in Dungeons & Dragons it's just solid spells, in the novels you are building up the spells from bits. So you are creating a sentence, as it is, from words to create the magic effect of it, and those words are disappearing from your memory after you cast it. So you have a larger range. And I believe the game's trying to copy that more closely. So we've got types of mages, up to archmages, the rules of magic, magical styles, cantraps, spells themselves, enchanted items, dealing with sandistins. In Jack Vance's story, Fader's Waft, the Rhialto the Marvellous, the eponymous archmagician searches for the Persiplex, a device that will exonerate his damaged reputation. So it gives you an example out of the books how these things work. Magical specializations, magic resistance and protection. In the workroom, how you invent new spells, how you simplify them. Designing and researching new items. We've got various enchanted properties. So when you create a magical item, you'll be giving it various magical properties. Things like ability boosts, defense. What else we got here? Healing effects. Magician's manses, so the places they stay to learn their magic. His manse represents his personality and attitude to the world. Here the magician eats, sleeps, and recovers from strenuous experimentation or adventures in distant lands. A review of the magic rules, and then the grimoire. So a array of spells. So we've got straightforward spells, and they've all got fairly fancy names, like the earlier versions of Dungeons & Dragons tended to. So Arnholt's Sequestris Digitalia, The Astounding Oral Projection, Behemoth's Bounty, Brassnose's 12-fold Bounty. So all the spells, going through multiple pages of them. We've got more complex spells, magical materials and enchanted items like iron stones. You can see where Dungeons & Dragons has borrowed so heavily from the books of Jack Vance. I really like that image of the levitating cow, I have to say. I noticed that in an earlier flick through, and it really appealed to me. It doesn't look happy with the idea at all. Then we've got equipment. As I said, we've got the introduction, we've got a price chart, and that's it. 2 pages of equipment. You know, it doesn't really detail anything out much. It's just got a list, and it tells you how to handle equipment in play. You know, how to haggle to get prices down. Then we've got player tips. Because this is different to standard role-playing games where you're going to be using language a lot more and role-playing out your character a lot more. So we've got your life so far, good behaviour, improving your character, so we've got how to spend experience in that. All-purpose taglines. Choose from this list of taglines. Almost all are drawn from Jack Vance's Dying Earth stories at the beginning of each session. By the time you use these, you should be amply qualified to devise new ones. More taglines will appear in future Dying Earth products. Survival tips. How to evade persuasion and avoid temptation. Then on to the Games Master section, where likewise it's teaching the Games Master about this world. You know, trust your creativity, fun coordination, rules interpretation, supporting cast of NPCs. We've got swindles and deals, casual cruelty, weird magic. Telling you about all the elements of the Dying Earth, where because the world's at its end, cruelty is far more common, kindness is far more rare. That magic itself is peculiar and strange and can be learned in different ways. So NPCs won't just be using the magic from the book, but can be using anything from the Games Master's imagination. Strange vistas, ruined wonders, so the ruins of the past civilizations. Exotic foods. Foppish apparel, so players are wearing almost Renaissance clothes, lots of frills and colours. Some advice on creating adventures, characters, how to improvise, using the taglines, the rule of underlying justice, how to run a series of stories, so how to build up a campaign. More blood, less drollery. Then we've got some places, so a gazetteer of the Dying Earth. Almery, a secluded and temperate region of Almery, offers a haven of civilization and prosperity in a world of danger and chaos. The Blanwalt Forest, this wilderness near Damath, is home to bizarre menagerie of lopsided, impossible creatures. The Forlorn Land. There's a trackless forest of twisted, stunted trees, so dense in places it takes a contortionist to traverse it. Just lots of really interesting places from the novels which you can include in your games to make them far more interesting and far more on tone for the world. Other worlds, distant times. A chart showing those journeys made by Cugel the Clever. So one of the characters from the novels showing where he journeyed. Then we've got a section on notable characters, the personages. So Chun the Unavoidable, Cugel the Clever, various characters out of the books, including the description of them and their ratings and stats for you to use them. There's Rhialto the Marvellous that we heard mentioned before. We've got the creatures section. Stop, GMs only. Talking about roughly how you use creatures in it, the migration of creatures from book to game, creature descriptions. So we've got the Archvault, a race of unearthly humanoids of great magical accomplishment, Chugs, Deodans, Erbs, Ghouls, Gids, Hoons, just lots of really odd creatures which you won't find in sort of standard fantasy. Turkmans. And then we've got an adventure, the Cooks of Quirnif. Now, I haven't played this adventure. It does seem to be very much on tone. You know, there's a swindle in there, there's various dealings, lots of role-playing environments, not much comedy. Not much combat, sorry. Much comedy as you want to throw into a role-playing game. So we've got eating competition, various elements from within it, registering for it, the eating contest rules, the days as the adventure go on, indigestion from eating too much. So there does appear to be humour in it after all. But it's a long adventure. I'm very surprised, but it makes a lot of sense for a world which is so different to Dungeons and Dragons, to different to standard fantasy, to have a massive adventure to lay out how this sort of stuff is going to work for players and for games masters. Finale, just desserts, and then we're finishing off with an index and a character sheet, which looks fairly standard, although you do notice that there's not things like strength, agility here. There's persuade, rebuff, attack, defense. So it's really putting your argumentative abilities up, top, and front. Second page, description of general appearance, servants and conveniences, etc. So that's the Dying Earth role-playing game. As I said, I'll go into the rules a bit more in a rules breakdown, and I might go into a character creation one because it seems quite interesting. But the world itself is absolutely fascinating. I can see why. I believe there's being another Dying Earth role-playing game being kickstarted at the moment. I'm pretty sure I read up on that. But this is a lovely, lovely book in a world which, if you've read the novels, will make so much sense, but does serve as a very, very good introduction to this setting and the novels of Jack Vance. So that's the Dying Earth RPG. And there's some wonderful stuff in there. I really like the setting. There's some fantastic ideas in there. And the rules are pretty interesting too. Now, as I said, I'll be doing a rules breakdown video in the next couple of weeks, where I'll be digging into how the rules exactly work and how they're very different from a number of other role-playing games. But obviously I've only had a few days to look into both the Dying Earth setting and the books by Jack Vance and read through the role-playing game itself. So if you're a fan of this game and a fan of the setting, please let me know what you like about it and things I should mention when I do future videos on it in the comments below. It'd be very much appreciated if you could bring my attention to the things that you absolutely love about this setting. Now, that won the poll this week with some 34% of the vote, way ahead of everything else, because in second place was another viewer's suggestion, Macho Women with Guns, which came in on 21%. Behind that was Dwarf Stone and Steel for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay on 17%. Spycraft from the Old Rack Entertainment Group on 16%, and way back behind was Rifts, very sadly because it's one of my favourite Rifts books, World Book 5 Tracks and the NGR, which came in on only 11%. But anyway, they're all wiped out of the poll as usual. They'll be making returns in future weeks because there's some fabulous books in there which definitely deserve a chance to appear in a video. But anyway, we're back onto a Retro Adventures one, and I decided, since I've been playing it safe the last few weeks and doing things that I knew pretty well, and I've been in the polls a few times, because I needed the videos to be pretty easy to make, I would go with all new options this time. So none of these been in a poll before. So first up, we've got Tales from the Forlorn Hope for Cyberpunk. Now this is apparently a collection of about 10 adventures with the same setting. So sounds interesting to me, but I know little more about it than that. After that, we've got Ice Demon for Dark Conspiracy. Now, I played this way back when it came out, in 92? And it was a load of fun. We almost got completely wiped out in part of the adventure because somebody just stumbled into a place they shouldn't have gone. And we had a whale of a time, and it's Dark Conspiracy, which I really, really love. After that, we've got Termination 1456 for the Star Trek role-playing game by Fazer. Now, we've covered some Fazer adventures in the past. They are absolutely brilliant. And this one looks really interesting, even though it's based on Star Trek 2 and uses that as its source. It seems almost like it's more like Star Trek 6. So was this predictive of the plot of Star Trek 6? We shall see if we get to make a video on it. After that, we've got A View to a Kill for the James Bond 007 RPG. Now, I did Dr. No a few weeks ago, and that was an absolutely fabulous one. But I decided to go with A View to a Kill because it was the first Bond movie I went to the cinema to see. And it's not considered one of the best movies, but I've got a fond place in my heart for it, so I'd love to see what the adventure's like. And finally, we've got First Strike on Paradise for Star Race, which came out from Pacesetter Games in 1985. Now, Star Race was one of my first RPGs. It's basically Star Wars. There's the remnants of a republic fighting against an evil empire that's taken over the galaxy. There's bear men, there's cat people, there's a mystical power, but it's all based around playing cards. So engineers will be clubs and pilots will be aces and etc. And it's a fabulous game. Star Wars with all the serial numbers filed off. But it's kind of been forgotten about. So it'd be lovely to look through an adventure which is Star Wars but not quite, and see how it matches up to the actual Star Wars adventures by West End Games and Wizard of the Coast as time went on. What else have I been up to? Well, over on Drive-Thru RPG, I've been bringing out character classes for Ancient Rome. Now this is in the build-up to having a setting where people from across space and time come together. So we've had Wild West ones, we've had pirate ones, we've had modern horror, we've had 1920s horror, we've had science fiction, we've had cyberpunk. I'm building up a vast repository of different character classes that people can play to come together against this threat they will find themselves faced off against. But we've got a few more to go after this, but at the moment it's Ancient Rome. Now you can find those on Drive-Thru RPG, or if you become a patron of Laird or Librarian status, you can find them on a shared Google Drive that we share with patrons of that status. The Patreon, as always, is in the description down below. And over on RPG Gamer, well, I've been working through episodes of The Acolyte. I'm coming up towards the end of the series at the moment, but there's been all the things to go through and stat out. Characters, force abilities, the different weapons used in it, starships, so much to go over. It's been an absolutely fun time. And when I finish that off, I'll be going back to the Knights of the Old Republic comics, which I was working through and having a great time reviewing and doing stats for. I might take a break and catch up with the Vader comics and the High Republic comics that I generally cover once a month or so, but it's been a few months, so I've got a few back issues. I might take this opportunity as a break to catch up on those, but we shall see how it goes. Anyway, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough as usual, so thank you very much for watching. As always, most of all, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.